The tires crunched over gravel as we ascended the last winding mile of road, our SUV weaving through towering pines and fading sunlight. Emily sat in the passenger seat, sunglasses perched atop her head, hair falling in effortless waves over her shoulders. She looked out the window, her profile soft in the golden light, peaceful, even content. I almost believed we were okay again. "This place better have a fireplace," she said, giving me a little smirk, the kind she used to give when we were first dating and everything felt new. "It has two, actually," I said. "One in the living room and one in the bedroom." She laughed lightly. "Overachiever." I smiled, even as something in my gut twisted. She hadn't held my hand once during the drive. We'd been together for nearly 10 years, married for 6. This weekend marked our anniversary. And instead of our usual beachfront resort or dinner downtown, Emily had booked us this secluded cabin in the mountains, 3 hours north of anything familiar. No cell service, she warned as we pulled into the driveway. No emails. No distractions. Just us. That should have been romantic. But it felt like a setup. Still, I played my part. I grabbed our bags from the back, unlocked the thick pinewood door, and carried everything inside. The cabin was beautiful in a rugged, Instagrammable way: vaulted ceilings, exposed beams, faux fur throws, a massive stone fireplace. A chilled bottle of wine sat on the counter with a handwritten welcome note. "Rustic luxury," Emily said, running her fingers over the grain of the dining table. She walked barefoot across the wood floor, making a beeline for the bedroom. I followed, bags in hand. "You sure we're not glamping?" She shot me a grin over her shoulder. "If we are, I picked the best tent." Inside, the bed was king-sized, wrapped in flannel sheets and thick quilts. She turned back to me, leaned in close, her lips brushing my neck as she whispered, "Start the fire, and maybe I'll show you how much I missed you." That hit me right in the chest. Desire bloomed, sudden and sharp. I wanted to believe she meant it. I wanted to believe this trip was her way of reconnecting with me. Maybe all the distance, the vague excuses, the nights she stayed out late with friends, or spent scrolling her phone under the covers, it had all led to this, to healing. She disappeared into the bathroom while I got the fire going. Soon, flames crackled and danced, casting a warm glow over the cabin. When Emily returned, she'd changed into one of my old hoodies and a pair of lacy black underwear. That contrast, cozy and provocative, made me ache for her. "You're staring," she teased, crawling onto the bed and propping herself against the pillows. I set the wine glasses down on the nightstand and joined her, heart pounding in a mix of lust and confusion. "You're giving me a reason to." Her lips brushed mine. Soft. Familiar. God, I'd missed this. My hand slid under the hoodie, fingers tracing the curve of her waist, and she sighed into my mouth, arching toward me. But just as things started to build, she pulled back. "Not yet," she whispered. I froze. "What's wrong?" She shook her head. "Nothing. I want to talk first." And just like that, the moment vanished. The air shifted. "About what?" I asked, sitting up slightly, heart still thudding. She sat cross-legged on the bed, facing me, eyes serious. "About us. About where we are. Where I'm at." I didn't like the sound of that. She reached for her wine, took a slow sip, then looked me straight in the eyes. "Have you felt it too? The drift?" I nodded cautiously. "Yeah, but I thought that's why we came up here. To fix that." Emily exhaled. "In part, but also because I need to say something I've been holding in for a while. Something I didn't know how to bring up at home." There it was again, that twisting sensation in my stomach, that instinctive bracing before a blow. "Okay," I said carefully. "I'm listening." She set her wine down and pulled the hoodie tighter around herself like armor. "Don't freak out, okay?" Not a great way to begin a conversation. "I've been feeling stuck," she said. "Not unhappy, not ungrateful, but like I've lost part of myself. Like I don't know who I am anymore outside of us, outside of being your wife." My chest tightened. "Emily." "Let me finish," she said gently. "I've been reading, listening to podcasts, talking to people. And I realized something. I've been craving more than what we've had. Not just emotionally, but physically too." The fire popped loudly behind us. I felt like I'd just stepped off a cliff. "What are you saying?" She looked down, her voice quieter now. "I want to explore, with other people. I want us to consider opening our marriage." For a few seconds, I couldn't breathe. "What?" Her eyes flicked back to mine. "I still love you. That hasn't changed. But I need space to rediscover who I am. I thought maybe we could explore it together. This trip, it was supposed to be the start of that conversation." I stood, walking to the fireplace, staring into the flames as my mind reeled. Jesus, Emily. I didn't know how to tell you, she said. I thought the cabin would be a safe space. No distractions. Just honesty. I turned slowly to face her. Is there someone already? She hesitated. That hesitation was an answer. I haven't done anything, she said quickly. But there's been interest. From someone I met at the gym. Nothing's happened. Not yet. Not yet. The words echoed louder than the crackle of the fire. I booked this place, she said softly, to be away from the noise. To give us space to talk. And maybe decide if we want to try something new. Together. I nodded slowly, my hands clenched into fists at my sides. Right? I said. Together. But I already knew. Everything was about to fall apart. The silence between us stretched long after the fire dimmed. Emily sat on the bed, legs pulled to her chest, eyes fixed on me like she was waiting for a reaction, any reaction. But my mouth was dry, my thoughts scattered, and my body still humming with leftover arousal that now felt like a cruel joke. So, I finally said, pacing near the cabin window, this whole trip, this cabin, the fire, the wine, you planned it so you could pitch me an open marriage like it's some sort of business deal? Her face flushed. I didn't plan it like that. It wasn't calculated. I thought we needed a neutral space to talk. Neutral. I laughed, but there was no humor in it. You brought me 3 hours into the woods, cut off our cell service, poured me a drink, climbed into bed half naked, and then dropped the biggest bomb of our marriage. That's not neutral, Emily. That's fucking staged. I wasn't trying to manipulate you, she said quietly. I wanted us to be alone, to be real. No distractions, I echoed bitterly. Just your confession and a crackling fire. She pulled the hoodie tighter again, curling into herself like a child. I thought you'd at least be open to hearing me out. I turned from the window, arms crossed. I am hearing you out. Go ahead. Tell me what else you've been thinking about while I was making dinner and picking up dry cleaning and holding this marriage together. That stung her. Her eyes narrowed slightly. Don't do that. Don't act like I've just been lounging around playing house. You know damn well I've carried my weight. Have you? I snapped. Because it's starting to sound like you've been carrying something else. Or someone else. She stood now, anger replacing her hesitation. I told you, I haven't crossed any lines. But you've been thinking about it. Fantasizing. Maybe even flirting. Jesus, Emily, was this guy your first thought when you bought this cabin? No, she said, too quickly. But maybe part of me hoped that if we could have this talk here, you'd understand. That you'd be willing to explore this with me. That it didn't have to mean the end of us. My jaw tightened. I walked past her to the table, grabbed the wine bottle, and poured myself more than I should have. I didn't sit. I didn't want to feel comfortable in this moment. I've given you everything, I said, my voice low. Stability, time, love. We built a life together. And now, on our anniversary, you're telling me that's not enough. Her voice broke. I didn't say that. You didn't have to. She moved toward me then, slowly, almost cautiously, like I was something fragile that might break if she touched me too hard. I still want you, she said. I still need you. This isn't about replacing you. It's about rediscovering me. I feel like I've been living someone else's life. I fell into this pattern and never asked myself what I wanted. I stared at her, the woman I had undressed 1,000 times, now suddenly feeling like a stranger. And what do you want, Emily? Be honest. Do you want to fuck other men? Is that it? She flinched but didn't retreat. I want to feel again. Passion. Heat. Curiosity. Not just routine. That hit me harder than if she had slapped me. So I'm a routine now? I didn't mean it like that. No, you did. You just didn't expect me to hear it so clearly. She looked away. Her hands trembled slightly as she sat back down, brushing hair from her face. I don't want to lose you. I thought maybe, if we tried this together, it would help us, not hurt us. I drained my wine and set the glass down a little too hard. You want to fuck someone else and expect that to help us? That's not healing, Emily. That's anesthesia. You're trying to numb something you haven't even named yet. I'm trying to wake up, she said. I feel like I've been sleepwalking through our life. And I'm scared that if I don't take control now, I'll wake up one day and not recognize myself. And what if I'm the one who doesn't recognize you anymore? I asked. That landed. Her eyes filled, but she blinked the tears away. I thought maybe if we set some boundaries, rules, it wouldn't feel like betrayal. It is betrayal. She stood again, moving closer now, slowly, hands tentative as they reached for mine. But it doesn't have to be. Not if we choose this together. If we set the terms. Her fingers touched mine. My body reacted before my brain did, because that's what 10 years of loving someone will do. My hand stayed there, not holding hers, not pulling away. Rules. I said bitterly. Like what? Don't fall in love? Don't ask questions. We'd make them together, she whispered. No lies. No people we both know. Nothing that could ruin us. I shook my head slowly. Emily, this could ruin us. She didn't answer. Just stared at me with those green eyes that once lit me up inside. And for a terrible second, I remembered what it was like to slide my hands up her hips, to hear her moan my name, to feel like I was the only man she saw. But now, I wasn't sure I even made the list. She leaned in, kissed me softly on the mouth, one of those uncertain, questioning kisses. I didn't pull back. I let it happen. And God help me, part of me kissed her back. Because part of me still loved her. Even as another part was preparing for war. The ride home from the cabin was quiet. Emily dozed off halfway down the mountain, her head resting lightly against the window, her breath fogging the glass with every exhale. I drove with both hands on the wheel and my jaw locked tight, pretending the winding road demanded my full attention. In reality, my mind was miles away, still in that cabin, still hearing her voice say open marriage like it was a couple spa treatment. I should have felt angry, but mostly I felt hollow. When we pulled into our driveway, she stirred and gave me a small smile, like we'd just come back from some romantic escape. She reached over and rested a hand on my thigh. I didn't flinch, but I didn't look at her either. Inside, everything was in its place. The house was clean, the fridge humming quietly, the thermostat blinking its usual numbers. Our lives were preserved like nothing had changed. Except everything had. The next few days were a haze of routine. Work, meals, laundry, emails. We didn't talk about the conversation. Not directly, but it hovered between us like the scent of something burnt, subtle, acrid, impossible to ignore. On Wednesday night, I came home to find her curled up on the couch, laptop on her lap, glass of wine in hand. Hey, she said. I made that lemon chicken you like. It's staying warm in the oven. I hung up my jacket and set my keys on the counter. Thanks. She watched me closely. How was work? Busy. Another silence. We were becoming experts at them. I opened the oven, plated the chicken, and sat across from her at the table. I ate slowly, chewing each bite with robotic efficiency. Emily sipped her wine, watching me like she was waiting for an opening. Finally, she said, I've been thinking. Yeah. I asked without looking up. Maybe we should set some rules. If we're going to try this. There it was. Again. I set my fork down, wiped my mouth with a napkin. We haven't even agreed to anything, Emily. I know, she said quickly. But I don't want to hurt you. I want this to be something we navigate together, not something that tears us apart. I leaned back in my chair. Then maybe don't do it. She blinked. You said you'd think about it. And I have. I exhaled hard. It still feels like you're asking for a permission slip to fuck someone without calling it cheating. Her face twisted. It's not just about sex. It's about rediscovering yourself. Yeah, you said that. She put the wine down. Look, I know this is hard. I really do. But I've done the research. I've read about couples who made it work, who actually got stronger from it. Oh good, I said. You've done the research. That makes it all better. Her voice sharpened. I'm trying to include you, for God's sake. I could have just gone behind your back. I stared at her then, and something in me hardened. Why didn't you? She flinched. What kind of question is that? The kind you ask when your wife is emotionally halfway out the door, and you're left wondering how long she's been fantasizing about being with someone else. Her voice cracked slightly. This wasn't easy for me to bring up. I stood, plate in hand. Well, I guess it's easier than sneaking around. She didn't answer. I washed my dish and left the room. The next morning, she brought it up again, but this time, with more restraint. A truce offering. Look, she said over coffee. If we're not ready to make any decisions yet, let's at least talk about boundaries. Like, what would be off limits? I sipped my coffee, then said flatly, anyone we both know. No lies. And no falling in love. Agreed, she said, as if we were signing a treaty. Also full honesty. No sneaking. We share everything. Who, when, how? I looked at her. You want to tell me the details? If you want. Or not. It's up to you. I shook my head. This is fucking surreal. I know, she whispered. We sat there in silence again, drinking coffee like we were planning a renovation. Except the thing being gutted was our marriage. That weekend, we went to a mutual friend's birthday dinner. Her name was Nina, one of Emily's yoga buddies, and she'd rented out the back room of a wine bar downtown. Soft jazz, dim lighting, expensive charcuterie. Emily looked stunning in a black silk blouse that dipped just low enough to tease, but not enough to provoke. Her hair fell in loose curls, her makeup flawless. She leaned into me during conversations, laughed a little louder, smiled a little longer. Was it for me? Or was it for show? At one point, she caught me staring at her while she was talking with another couple. Her eyes met mine, and something flickered, something playful, hungry. Like she remembered we weren't just roommates with joint checking accounts. And for a moment, I felt that old pull, the one that made me fall in love with her in the first place. Later, in bed, she slid her hands up my chest, her lips brushing my neck. "I want you," she whispered. We undressed slowly, deliberately. For the first time in months, there was no rush, no script. Her body was warm and familiar, but her eyes held something new, like she was testing me, or herself, like she was asking if this still felt right. And it did. God help me, it did. But afterward, while she curled against me, I kept staring at the ceiling, wondering who she was imagining when she came. Me? Or someone else? The following Friday, Emily packed a small overnight bag, kissed me goodbye in the driveway, and told me she was headed to a solo retreat. Her voice was soft, measured, and sweet like honey dripping off a spoon. "I need the space," she said. "Just to think. Journal. Breathe." I nodded, holding her gaze longer than necessary. "You taking your yoga mat?" She paused. "Yeah, and a book. Nothing major. Just time alone." It was the look in her eyes that made my gut tighten. Not guilt, not shame, excitement. When she pulled out of the driveway, my chest felt like it was holding a brick. Inside the house, silence settled like a weight. I sat on the edge of the bed we'd shared just hours ago and noticed the faint indent of her body still lingering in the sheets. On the nightstand, her charger was gone. Her hairbrush, a bottle of lavender lotion she only took when she traveled with intention. I told myself not to snoop. Told myself it didn't matter. That we'd agreed to honesty, to rules, to this new experiment in trust. But when I walked past the bathroom, I noticed her closet door slightly ajar. Her overnight bag had been on the floor this morning. Now it was gone, and something gnawed at me. I crouched, opened the door fully, and there, tucked in the corner of her drawer, was a black lace lingerie set I had never seen before. Tags removed, folded delicately like it had been packed with care. It wasn't for me. Not this time. I closed the drawer slowly, like I was sealing away the part of me that still hoped this was a phase. A detour. A mistake she'd realized before she crossed whatever line she was chasing. That night, I poured a whiskey, sat on the couch, and stared at my phone far longer than I should have. She hadn't texted. Not even a "got here safe" or an update about how the retreat was going. I told myself not to care, not to reach out. But I did. "Me, hope you're safe." No reply. The next morning, I woke up late. Her side of the bed was untouched. The house was too quiet, the air too still. By noon, I was at the gym, running on a treadmill, trying to drown out my thoughts with sweat and repetition. Every mile I ran felt like a protest, a refusal to spiral. She wanted space? Fine. Let her have all the space in the world. When I got back, I showered and made lunch. I tried not to check my phone, but the screen lit up around 2:47 p.m. "Emily, it's beautiful here. Hope you're okay. I'll be home late tomorrow. XO." That was it. No photos. No, "wish you were here." No warmth beyond the obligatory XO. Later that night, I opened Instagram out of habit. She hadn't posted anything in weeks. But that wasn't what I was checking. I was looking at likes, follows, photos tagged at resorts, yoga retreats, cabins. Nothing. And yet, it still felt like she wasn't alone. That evening, I cooked dinner for one and poured another drink I didn't need. The house felt like a museum of a marriage that once thrived. Photos on the wall of beach vacations and anniversary dinners. Notes she'd once tucked into my lunch bag with dumb little hearts. Concert tickets still magnet to the fridge. Evidence of a love that was now somehow on trial. Around 10 p.m., I walked into our bedroom and stood at her dresser again. My hand hovered over the drawer, then slid it open. Her second phone, a slim burner she once used for work travel, was gone. She hadn't mentioned packing it. The thought hit me like ice water to the spine. Was that the device she planned to use? To stay discreet? Was this the future we were walking into? Secret phones. Coded goodbyes. Polite lies. I sat down at the edge of the bed, head in my hands, and whispered into the empty room, "What the hell are we doing?" The next morning, I got up early and went for a drive. I needed air, movement, anything to keep from sitting and stewing. That's when Rachel showed up. I had just pulled into the driveway when her SUV parked behind me. She got out with a covered bowl in her hands and a look in her eyes I couldn't quite place. "Thought you might be in need of comfort carbs," she said. "It's my mom's chicken noodle soup. The real stuff. Not that crap from a can." I tried to smile. "You didn't have to." "I know. But I wanted to." She stepped closer, nudging the bowl toward me. "Mind if I come in?" I hesitated, then nodded. Inside, the house smelled like loneliness and lemon cleaner. Rachel walked straight into the kitchen like she'd done it 100 times. And maybe she had, back when Emily and I used to throw little dinners with wine and charcuterie boards and bad Spotify playlists. "You okay?" she asked, setting the soup down. I shrugged. "Define okay." She turned, leaned against the counter. Her eyes scanned me, reading between the lines of everything I hadn't said. "I ran into Emily last week," she said, "at that juice bar on 5th. She looked different." I raised an eyebrow. "Different how?" "Relaxed. Distant. Like she wasn't quite here anymore." She paused. I didn't want to pry, but something in her energy was off. I stayed quiet. Rachel tilted her head. "Want to talk about it?" I exhaled. "She's on a solo retreat." Her lips pressed into a thin line. "Uh-huh. And you believe that?" I looked at her for a long moment, then said, "No, not really." Something shifted in her expression, part concern, part indignation. She stepped closer, touched my arm. "You deserve better than this. You know that, right?" I looked down at her hand. For a moment, I let it stay there. And something inside me stirred, just a flicker. Warmth. Attention. A softness I hadn't felt in weeks. And the strange, dangerous thought. Maybe I needed to rediscover something too. Rachel stayed longer than I expected. The soup went untouched. Instead, we ended up sitting across from each other at the kitchen table, 2 glasses of wine between us and a kind of cautious intimacy growing in the silence. Not romantic, at least not yet, but quiet, charged, and familiar. It felt strange, sitting there with her, talking like we hadn't in years. She used to be around all the time, back when Emily and I still hosted things and shared parts of our lives with other people. Rachel was Emily's best friend. They met in college, stayed close through every phase of life. Jobs, weddings, miscarriages, promotions, petty fights. Rachel had always been around. But now she wasn't here for Emily. She was here for me. "You looked like you needed company," she said after a long sip of wine. "And maybe a reality check." I raised a brow. "That bad, huh?" She gave a small, sad smile. "Not bad. Just not you. You always seemed grounded. Solid. You were the guy who had it figured out." I laughed dryly. "That guy's MIA. Maybe indefinitely." Rachel tilted her head. "Does she know what she's doing to you?" I met her eyes. "You'd have to ask her." "I'd rather not." That surprised me. Rachel had always been loyal to Emily, maybe even to a fault. She defended her during arguments, reassured me when Emily got distant, said things like she just needs time or you know how she gets. But tonight, she looked different. Less like a best friend defending a partner. More like a woman disappointed in someone she once admired. "You okay?" I asked, studying her. She leaned back, tracing her finger along the rim of her glass. I thought I was. But honestly, I'm pissed. Pissed. She looked up, eyes sharper now. "Yeah, at her. I know it's not my place, but Emily's always been restless. You know that, right?" I said nothing. "She wants adventure. Change. Something new every year. And you've always been her anchor. But anchors aren't sexy when someone's chasing wind." Her words hit hard. Not just because they were true, but because they came from someone who'd known Emily nearly as long as I had. "I didn't see it happening," I said finally. "We were good. At least I thought we were. There were signs, sure, but I ignored them." "We all do," Rachel said softly. "You want to believe the person you love is just going through a phase. Not out there, planning to experiment." I laughed bitterly. Experiment. That's one word for it. She reached across the table and touched my hand. Light, deliberate. "You didn't deserve this." I stared at her fingers resting against mine. "You're not supposed to say that. You're her best friend. Not tonight." The room went quiet. The fire in the living room crackled faintly from the other side of the open floor plan. Outside, the wind tapped the windows. Rachel's hand lingered. I didn't move. "She ever talk to you about this?" I asked. Rachel hesitated. Once. I looked up. When? A couple months ago. We were at that wine bar. She brought it up like a joke at first, like hypothetically, what would I do if I was married and wanted to sleep with someone else without it being cheating? What did you say? I told her she was playing with fire. And she laughed. Rachel's face darkened. Yeah, she laughed. Like I was being dramatic. Like monogamy was some outdated concept. I clenched my jaw. And now she's off doing God knows what with God knows who while I sit here learning to make dinner for one. Rachel's voice softened. You deserve more than this. Funny, I said, voice tight. She says she wants more too. Just not with me. The silence after that was longer. Heavier. Rachel stood and walked slowly toward the sink, setting her glass down, then turned to lean against the counter. Her arms crossed in front of her chest, and her eyes were unreadable. I told her once, she said quietly, not to take you for granted. I looked up. She was venting, saying you were getting too predictable, that you weren't ambitious enough outside the bedroom, that she felt like she was outgrowing you. Rachel swallowed. And I said, you're married to someone who shows up, who's steady, who'd never walk out on you for a whim. Don't mess that up. What did she say? She laughed. Rachel's voice turned flat. She said, don't be so serious, Ratch. It's not like I'd ever leave him. He's too loyal. I felt that like a punch. Loyal. As if that was a leash, not a virtue. As if my consistency was something to be manipulated. I stood, pacing the kitchen slowly. So this was all just a slow build. And I missed it. No, Rachel said. You didn't miss it. She hid it. Or worse. She thought it didn't matter because you'd always be there. I stopped in front of her. We stood close, closer than we had any right to be. Her perfume was subtle. Her breath steady. I'm sorry, she said. You didn't deserve any of this. I know, I said, voice low. She reached up and touched my face, just a brush of her fingertips against my jaw. And if she doesn't see what she has, someone else will. My breath hitched. Our eyes locked. For one suspended second, we just stood there, her hand on my cheek, my hands at my sides, everything inside me torn between guilt and something else. Something warmer. Something alive. Then the moment passed. She dropped her hand and looked away. I should go, she whispered. Probably. She turned, gathered her purse. I followed her to the door. Just before she stepped outside, she paused. You're not alone, she said. And then she was gone. But her touch stayed with me long after the door closed. Rachel texted me 2 days later. Ratch, small bonfire at my place Saturday. Nothing crazy. Just company if you want it. I stared at the message longer than I should have. Company. That's all she said. No pressure. No implication. No mention of the moment we almost shared, of her hand on my cheek, of the almost kiss that lingered in my mind like a scent I couldn't scrub off. I typed a dozen different replies before settling on the simplest one. Me, yeah? Sounds good. Saturday night came. Emily was home again, floating through the house like everything was normal. She hadn't said anything about her retreat, just walked through the front door with glowing skin, a new playlist on her phone, and a faint trace of perfume I didn't recognize. She kissed my cheek in passing, said she might meet up with some friends later. You have plans tonight? She asked casually, eyes on her phone. Yeah, I said. Bonfire at Rachel's. Her eyes flicked up. Rachel? Yeah. She hesitated. You two haven't talked in a while. I shrugged. She dropped by the other day. Brought soup. Emily nodded slowly. Right. Of course. That sounds nice. She didn't ask to come. I didn't offer. Rachel lived in a little ranch-style house just across town. Cozy. Lived in. The kind of place with mismatched mugs and plants she actually kept alive. By the time I arrived, the fire pit in her backyard was already lit. A few people were milling about. Co-workers, a couple of friends I vaguely recognized from birthdays past. Low music played from a Bluetooth speaker. The smell of burning cedar filled the air. She spotted me as I stepped through the gate. There you are, she said, smiling as she handed me a beer. Didn't think you'd show. I said I would. Yeah, she said, but people say a lot of things. Her eyes lingered on me just a beat longer than necessary. I took the beer. The night was easy. Laughs came quicker than I expected. Rachel made space beside her on the bench near the fire, our knees just brushing as we sat side by side, talking about everything except Emily. I needed this, I said at one point. She looked at me. Me too. As the night thinned and the guests trickled out, the fire crackled lower, and the silence between us became something heavier. Not awkward, just charged. Her legs curled up beside her, wine in hand, bare toes brushing my shin. You ever think about it? She asked suddenly, eyes on the fire. Think about what? What it would have been like if we'd met before you, and Emily got serious. The question hit like a spark in dry grass. I looked at her. Why are you asking that? She smiled, a little embarrassed, a little dangerous. Because I think about it sometimes. Especially now. Rachel. She turned to face me, eyes clearer than I'd ever seen them. Don't worry. I'm not trying to complicate your life. But I'm not going to pretend I don't see you. Or that I haven't seen you all this time. The space between us felt too small. Too hot. The fire, the wine, her nearness. It was all too much. You're Emily's best friend? I said quietly. Not lately, she replied. We were too close now. Her hand moved to my thigh, resting lightly. You deserve to be wanted, she whispered. Don't let her convince you otherwise. I closed my eyes. For a second, I felt the urge to lean in, to forget everything, to let Rachel's lips replace every unanswered question Emily left behind. But I didn't. I stood instead. I should go. Rachel looked up at me, something flickering across her face, disappointment, maybe, but respect too. She stood and followed me to the gate. Before I opened it, she touched my arm. She's not the only one who gets to explore, she said. Just don't forget that. I nodded. I won't. And I meant it. Because for the first time in weeks, I wasn't just drowning in Emily's choices. I was starting to think about my own. When I got home, the house was dark. Emily wasn't back yet. Her side of the bed was empty, her phone charger gone again. But this time, I didn't bother wondering where she was or who she was with. I lay down and stared at the ceiling, Rachel's words echoing in my head. You deserve to be wanted. I hadn't realized how much I'd missed that feeling until she said it. Until I felt it. The warmth of being seen, really seen, not as someone stable or reliable or good, but as someone desired. Emily returned around 2 a.m. I heard her keys in the door, her quiet steps through the hallway. She slipped into bed without a word, her body smelling like sandalwood and some cologne I didn't recognize. She didn't touch me, didn't even face me. But for once, I didn't care. Because I knew someone else would have. The next time I saw Rachel, I didn't plan it. It was Tuesday. I was at the grocery store picking up things Emily used to remember without asking: almond milk, the herbal tea she liked before bed, the Greek yogurt brand she insisted had better probiotics. I tossed everything into the cart anyway. Muscle memory. I turned the corner toward the produce aisle, and there she was. Rachel, in dark jeans and a simple gray hoodie, pushing a basket with one hand and scrolling her phone with the other. Her hair was tied up messily, a pair of sunglasses perched on her head. She looked, God, I don't even know. Real. Comfortable. Human. Not performing. Not pretending. She looked up at the same time I did, and her face brightened. Twice in 1 week, she said. That's gotta be a sign. I smiled despite myself. You stalking me? Nope, she said, grinning. Just running dangerously low on hummus. We ended up walking together, grabbing a few more things we didn't need. It felt easy, like slipping into an old jacket you forgot you owned. I was thinking about the other night, Rachel said as we waited in line. About what I said. I looked at her. Which part? She laughed softly. The part where I basically admitted I've been quietly in love with my best friend's husband for the last decade. I didn't know what to say, but something in my chest stirred again. Something warm and confusing. I'm not sorry, she added quickly. I probably should be, but I'm not. Why not? Her voice dropped, almost like she didn't want the cashier to hear. Because someone should love you like that. Fiercely. Unapologetically. And if it can't be her, it damn well should be someone who sees you for everything you are. The line moved forward. I barely noticed. She helped me carry the bags to my car. As I loaded them into the back seat, I felt her watching me. When I closed the door and turned around, she was still there. Closer than expected. I wasn't trying to cause problems, she said. I know this is messy, but I couldn't sit on it anymore. You're not the problem, I said quietly. Her eyes searched mine. Then what are we doing? I didn't have an answer. Instead, I stepped forward. Just one step. Just enough to cross that invisible threshold we'd both been tiptoeing around. She didn't back away. We stood like that for a long, breathless second, faces inches apart, the noise of the parking lot fading into nothing. And then she kissed me. Not forcefully. Not rushed. Just soft. Certain. And I kissed her back. Her hands slid up into my hair, mine around her waist, her body pressed against mine in a way that left no doubt. This wasn't a mistake. It was a choice. We broke apart slowly. She looked at me, lips parted, breath catching in her throat. I shouldn't have done that, she said. I'm not sorry you did. She nodded once, lips curving into something between a smile and a sigh. Come by later? She asked. I hesitated, but only for a second. Yeah, I said. I will. Emily wasn't home that evening. At this point, I didn't even ask where she went. She just texted me around 7. Emily, meeting a friend for drinks. Don't wait up. I stared at the screen, then set my phone down without replying. An hour later, I was at Rachel's. She opened the door already barefoot, holding a glass of red wine and wearing a faded band tee and leggings. Her hair was down this time, a little wild. There was music playing slow, ambient, something wordless and intimate. Hey, she said, her voice soft. Come in. I stepped inside. The door clicked shut behind me. We didn't say much. She set her wine down and moved toward me, her fingers finding the hem of my shirt. Can I? She whispered. I nodded. We undressed each other slowly, deliberately, like it mattered. Because it did matter. This wasn't cheap. It wasn't revenge. It was connection. Her skin was warm under my hands. Her mouth found my neck, my collarbone, my chest. And when we fell onto the couch, her straddling me, my hands wrapped around her hips, it felt like something I hadn't had in a long, long time. Not just sex. Intimacy. Not obligation. Not guilt. Not routine. But want. Afterward, we lay tangled on the couch, the music still playing somewhere in the background. Her head rested on my chest, our fingers laced together. I told her once, Rachel said suddenly, voice low. Told Emily not to confuse your patience for passivity. I looked down at her. What did she say? She laughed, she said bitterly. Said you were harmless. I clenched my jaw. Didn't realize harmless was an insult. It is, Rachel said, her voice sharper now. To someone like her. She always needed a villain. A fire. Something dramatic to keep her interested. She couldn't handle something real. I ran my fingers through her hair. And you? She looked up at me. I've had enough drama for a lifetime. She nestled into my side again, and I realized for the first time in a while, I felt still. Like I wasn't spinning anymore. I didn't know what this was, what it meant, but I knew I didn't want to run from it. And I wasn't going to apologize for that. Not anymore. Emily came home a day early. I didn't know it until I saw the familiar silhouette of my truck reflected in Rachel's front window, Emily's car rolling up slowly behind it. I was still in Rachel's kitchen, shirtless, drinking coffee from one of her chipped mugs, my body sore in that satisfied, deeply human way. The knock came hard. Quick. Repeated. Rachel froze, eyes locking with mine over the rim of her own mug. She didn't say a word. We both knew who it was. The second knock was louder. I stood, set the mug down, pulled my shirt over my head. My hands were still warm from touching Rachel's skin just 15 minutes earlier. My chest still held the faint perfume of her hair. The third knock came. Rachel didn't flinch. She stood, walked slowly to the door, and opened it without hesitation. Emily was standing there. Her face said it all, shock, disbelief, and something far uglier beneath, betrayal. She looked at Rachel first, then over her shoulder at me, then back to Rachel. Her voice came out low and steady, the kind that carried venom wrapped in silk. Well, she said. Yes, I wasn't the only one doing some rediscovering. Rachel stepped aside without blinking. Come in, Emily. Emily didn't move. No, I don't think I will. I stepped forward, arms crossed. You came to the door. You obviously wanted something. I wanted to know where you were. Now I know. Rachel didn't flinch. You could have just texted. Emily laughed, sharp and brittle. I was going to surprise you. Thought I'd bring takeout. I saw your truck and thought, no way. But here we are. I nodded slowly. Here we are. She looked back and forth between us. How long? Rachel opened her mouth, but I cut in. Long enough. Emily's eyes narrowed. You said we had rules. And you said this wasn't cheating, I snapped. You made the rules. You broke the trust. Rachel was off limits. Funny, Rachel said quietly, I don't remember signing that contract. Emily ignored her. You said no when we both know. No emotional connections. You promised. And what did you promise? I asked. To be honest? To tell me when it stopped being a marriage and became a sandbox. She looked stunned. Her voice cracked. You lied to me. No, I said. I caught up to you. Emily stepped forward now, eyes on fire. You don't understand what you've done. Oh, I understand, I said. I understand what it means to be disposable. You taught me. Rachel stood between us now. That's enough. Emily's gaze snapped to her. You knew what this would do. You knew it would ruin everything. Rachel didn't budge. You ruined it. Long before I ever kissed him. Emily went quiet. Rachel's voice was calm now. Controlled. You were always chasing something. And when you didn't find it in him, you went looking outside. But you never looked at him. You just expected him to wait while you found yourself. Emily shook her head slowly. You don't get to lecture me. Why not? Rachel said. Because I loved him quietly while you treated him like a backup plan? Emily turned to me. So this is your revenge? No, I said. This is what it looks like when someone finally sees me. The words hung in the air like smoke. Emily's mouth opened. Closed. Then she shook her head, scoffing as if it could soften the blow. I gave you permission, she said. You took advantage. I didn't ask for permission, I said. You left. I just stopped waiting. There it was. The truth. Ugly. Raw. Final. Emily backed away from the door, her hands clenched at her sides. You think this is real? She said, motioning to Rachel. You think this lasts? That you're anything more than a rebound in flannel and sentiment? Rachel didn't even blink. Maybe. Or maybe I'm just what he needed when the person who promised to love him decided he wasn't enough. Emily stared for a long beat, her face unreadable. And then she turned and walked back to her car without another word. We watched in silence as she drove off. The moment the engine faded, Rachel exhaled, shaky and slow. Well, she said, that went better than expected. I laughed. It came out broken, exhausted. You okay? No, she said, but I will be. We stood in her doorway for a moment, neither of us sure what came next. You don't owe me anything, Rachel said quietly. I turned to her. That's not how this feels. She searched my face. So what does this feel like? I didn't answer. Instead, I leaned in, pressed my lips against hers, slow, certain. When we broke apart, I said, it feels like the first honest thing I've done in a long time. She didn't speak. She just pulled me back inside. Emily called me the next day, not to apologize, not to explain, just to schedule a conversation. Can you come home tonight? She asked, her voice clipped and clinical, like she was trying to hide the bruise in it. We need to talk. I agreed, not because I owed her anything, but because closure deserved a face. When I got there, the house was too quiet. She was already sitting at the dining table, her laptop closed, a glass of wine untouched beside her. She wore a navy blouse I hadn't seen before and makeup she didn't need. She was preparing for a confrontation the way some people prepare for job interviews. Sit, she said. I stayed standing. She sighed. So that's how this is going to go. No, I said. This is how you made it go. Her lips pressed into a thin line. You broke the rules. I raised a brow. You mean the ones you made after you admitted to emotionally checking out of our marriage? We agreed. No one we both know. No emotional attachments. And what about honesty? I said. What about transparency? Did that apply to you? Because I found lingerie in your bag before your little retreat. Stuff I'd never seen. Want to tell me who that was for? She flinched. I stepped closer. You don't get to come at me with your list of violations like this was some clean game. This wasn't Monopoly, Emily. This was us. She stared down at her wine. I just didn't expect it to be her. That's the problem. You thought you could write the script. You thought you could set the terms of your betrayal, wrap it in permission, and I'd just stand there holding the rulebook while you went out to rediscover yourself. Her voice cracked. It wasn't betrayal. It was a choice, I cut in. That's what you keep saying. You made a choice. And so did I. She looked up then, her eyes glassy. You don't love her. You don't know what I feel. She was my friend. And I was your husband. That didn't stop you. Emily stood abruptly, knocking her chair back. I never thought you'd be this person. What person is that? The kind who throws it all away over someone he barely knows. I stepped closer. No, Emily. You threw it away the second you asked for an open marriage and didn't think to ask what it would do to me. She looked at me for a long moment. So that's it. You're just done. I exhaled. I've been trying to hold on to something that died the moment you decided I wasn't enough. You lit the match. All I did was stop pretending the fire wasn't burning. Her hands trembled now. We could have come back from this. No, I said. You wanted freedom, and I gave it to you. You just didn't like that I found mine too. She turned away, brushing tears from her eyes, but I didn't move. I couldn't. Rachel was supposed to be safe, she whispered. She was safe, I said, until you made me unsafe. Emily spun around, eyes wide. You're seriously going to throw away 10 years for a rebound? I'm not throwing anything away. I'm letting it go. There's a difference. She laughed bitterly. Good luck. You'll need it. I nodded. You too. And then I walked past her, up the stairs, and into our bedroom. Packing wasn't difficult. I didn't feel sentimental about the clothes, the books, the framed photos on the wall. They felt like artifacts now, relics from a story I no longer belonged to. She didn't come upstairs. Maybe she was waiting for me to change my mind. Or maybe she already knew it was over. When I came back down, bag slung over my shoulder, she was still at the table, her wine untouched, her eyes on the floor. I paused at the door. I meant what I said. I don't hate you. I just don't trust you. And that's not something we can fix. She didn't look up. I stepped outside into the fading light, the air crisp against my face. For the first time in months, I felt clean. Free. Rachel opened the door with sleepy eyes and a mug of tea in her hand. You okay? She asked. I nodded. Yeah, I am. She stepped aside, letting me in without asking a single question. She didn't need to. Later, we lay on the couch again, tangled in blankets, the soft hum of music playing behind us. She looked up at me, her voice small. You sure about this? I kissed her forehead. I've never been more sure of anything. She smiled, tucking herself against me, and I closed my eyes. I wasn't chasing a distraction. I wasn't burning my life down in retaliation. I was finally walking away from the ashes. I returned to the house one last time on a Sunday. Emily and I had agreed, via a cold string of texts, that I'd come collect whatever I hadn't taken the first time. The books I'd left in the study, a few winter jackets, a watch my grandfather gave me that she'd packed away in the back of a drawer. She said she'd be out when I arrived. She wasn't. When I pulled into the driveway, her car was already there, parked in her usual spot. I stared at it for a moment, gripping the steering wheel like it might answer a question I hadn't asked yet. Inside, the house smelled like lemon cleaner again, like she tried to wipe the memory of me from the air. But it clung in the corners, in the scratch on the hallway wall from where we moved the couch, in the framed photo still sitting on the entryway table, the two of us in Charleston, her head leaning against mine, both of us laughing like the future had already happened, and it was beautiful. She was in the kitchen, barefoot, nursing a coffee and staring out the window. You said you'd be gone, I said. She didn't turn around. I changed my mind. I dropped the box I'd brought on the floor, the sound echoing a little too loudly in the silence. I won't stay long. She nodded slowly. You never do anymore. I almost responded, but then I didn't. There was nothing left to fight over. No emotion strong enough to claw through the quiet acceptance that now existed between us. She turned finally, arms crossed over the oversized cardigan she always wore on slow mornings. Her eyes were red-rimmed, but dry. I thought I was doing the right thing, she said softly. Letting us explore. Giving us air. Air isn't always freedom, I said. Sometimes it's just space to drown in. She flinched. Just a little. I never stopped loving you, she added. Maybe not, I replied. But you stopped seeing me. Long before Rachel. Her name landed like a knife on tile. Not violent. Just loud. She's not who I thought you'd fall into, Emily said. Neither were you, I said. She swallowed hard. Do you hate me? No, I said. I think that would be easier, actually. I didn't mean to lose you. You didn't lose me, I said gently. You let go. And she had. It hadn't happened all at once. Not with an argument or a betrayal. It was gradual. Quiet. Like the slow dimming of a light you don't realize is flickering until it's already out. I kept thinking you'd fight harder, she whispered. I looked at her. I did. You just weren't looking. Another silence. One that didn't hurt anymore. I'm sorry, she said. For all of it. I nodded. I know. And I meant it. I did believe she was sorry. But I also knew sorry doesn't rewind anything. It doesn't rebuild what was never protected. I moved through the house gathering what was left of my life. 2 books, a worn hoodie, my old baseball glove from college. A photo of my parents I thought I'd lost. She'd left it neatly wrapped in tissue paper, sitting beside the door. When I came back downstairs, she was leaning against the frame, watching me. This is really goodbye then, she said. It already was, I said. This is just the part where we stop pretending it isn't. She nodded slowly. I opened the door, the cold air slipping in around us. She didn't try to hug me, didn't reach for my hand. We just stood there, 2 people at the edge of a chapter, the last page already turned. As I stepped outside, she called after me. I hope she loves you better than I did. I paused, turned slightly. She already does. And with that, I walked down the steps, across the gravel, and into a future I hadn't planned for, but finally wanted. The drive was quiet. No music, no traffic, just the sound of the tires humming along the road, and the kind of stillness that settles in your chest when something is finally, definitively over. When I pulled into Rachel's driveway, the porch light was on. She stepped out as I parked, a hoodie over her pajamas, mug in hand. She smiled the moment she saw me. And it wasn't the smile of someone who won. It was the smile of someone who waited without asking. I climbed the steps and stood in front of her. "It's done," I said. She nodded. And I feel okay. Just okay. I smiled back. I think I'm still learning what peace feels like. Rachel reached out and took my hand, fingers sliding through mine like they belonged there. "Well," she said, tugging gently, "you're home now." And as I followed her inside, I realized something. The hardest goodbyes are the ones that hurt less than you expected. Because sometimes, walking away isn't the sad ending. It's the first honest step towards something real. The cabin looked the same. Same gravel crunch beneath the tires. Same winding driveway framed by towering pines. Same crooked porch light that flickered when it shouldn't. The scent of earth and pine needles hit me the second I stepped out of the truck. It was colder now, late October, but the quiet was the same. Heavy, sacred. Like the trees themselves were holding their breath. Rachel stepped out beside me, stretching after the long drive. Her hair was in a braid, sunglasses tucked into the collar of her jacket. She looked around with a soft smile. "This the place?" she asked. "Yeah," I said. "This is it. The place where everything changed. The place Emily brought me to reconnect, only to break the ground under my feet. But now I was here again, by choice. And not alone. We unloaded slowly. Rachel didn't rush. She never did. She moved with a kind of quiet confidence that calmed me, even when I didn't know I needed it. Inside, the cabin was exactly as I remembered. Stone fireplace, rustic kitchen, old pinewood floors that creaked in all the same spots. I lit a fire while she unpacked the wine. No cell service. No distractions. Same rules. Knew everything. By the time the flames crackled, casting warm light against the walls, Rachel had curled up on the couch beside me, 2 glasses of wine in hand. "You okay being back here?" she asked. I sipped the wine. "Yeah, it's weird, but good weird." She leaned her head on my shoulder. "You don't talk about her much anymore." "There's not much left to say." She nodded, letting that sit for a while before whispering, "Does it feel like closure?" I thought about that. About the version of me who drove up here months ago, bracing for a romantic weekend that turned into an unraveling. About the man who drove back home trying to act like everything wasn't broken. And about the man I was now. "No," I said finally. "It doesn't feel like closure. It feels like a second chance." She smiled against my shoulder. "Good. Because I brought the good wine this time." I laughed. "You brought 2 bottles?" "3, she grinned. We drank slowly. Talked about nothing and everything. About stupid childhood stories, bad exes, favorite movie lines. The fire crackled lower, and at one point I caught myself staring at her, not just her face, but the way she moved, the way she listened, the way she didn't fill silence with filler words or make everything about herself, the way she just was. When the wine was gone and the fire burned down to embers, she stood and reached for my hand. "Come on," she said. I followed her to the bedroom, where the same quilted bedspread from months ago still lay across the mattress. She peeled her clothes off slowly, deliberately, not for seduction, but for intimacy, for comfort, for honesty, and I followed suit. We didn't rush. There was no urgency to prove anything, no desperation to reclaim lost time. Just hands and mouths and breath and heat, skin on skin, the quiet thud of a headboard. Her moan, soft, real, like it wasn't about performance, just presence. Afterward, we lay there tangled up, the room lit only by moonlight filtering through the blinds. Rachel traced her fingers along my chest. "Do you think we'd have found each other anyway?" I looked at her. "If I had met you before her, I don't think I'd have ever looked away." She smiled. Not smug, not flirtatious, just full. We stayed like that for a long time. No need to fill the silence. No need to name whatever it was we had. It wasn't about definitions anymore. It was about the truth of it. The next morning, I made coffee and stood out on the porch while she slept. The fog still clung to the trees. The pine needles were slick with dew. And for a moment, I just stood there and breathed. Months ago, I stood in this same place feeling like the bottom had dropped out. No? Now I felt grounded. And more than that, I felt wanted. Not for what I used to be. Not for what I could provide. But for who I was, without pretense, without conditions, without rules drawn on napkins and called boundaries. Emily had come here to ease me into a world where love meant less. And I came back to discover that love, real love, can mean more than it ever did. Rachel stepped onto the porch behind me, wrapping her arms around my waist from behind. Her cheek against my back. No words. Just warmth. And in that moment, I knew something simple and true. She didn't save me. She just saw me. And that was enough.